Look at the position in front of you. You're playing as black, and you're down a rook for a pawn with basically no compensation. I think it's fair to say that most chess players would resign in this position, but Aaron Nimzovich actually found a really gorgeous idea using an endgame technique known as the Suicidal Rook to draw this position with ease. He played the move rook to b8, and the idea of this move is quite clear. If the rook takes on b8, then it is stalemate. The rook on b8 and the king on b1 are trapping these two black pieces, and they have nowhere to go. And very conveniently, the rook is actually pinning this other rook, meaning it doesn't have the luxury to simply step aside to c4. And, there's no move that white can play. Rook to d3 doesn't help in any way because now the king can take on b4, and it is simply a draw in this position, and it's a beautiful way to draw as well. Now, the whole point of this video is to introduce that very idea where basically you give away your rook for free, but in exchange, you're actually getting into a stalemate position by force, and it is a draw. Now, we can look at this position here as white, and once again, it seems totally lost. I mean, these black pieces are overwhelming your king, and it seems to be a position where you can comfortably resign. But here, white ended up playing queen to f4, a gorgeous sacrifice, and if the king moves, then queen to f8 will lead to checkmate. So pawn has to take, and now rook to b7 check. And the idea is if king takes, notice there is stalemate by all of these pieces here. There's nothing that white, there's no move that white can play. And if the king doesn't move, then the rook simply traces the king's steps and just continues to follow the king. A very important detail to take notice of is that the queen could take the rook in some of these cases, but if it does, this is still stalemate. So you have to do these moves where you're going for the stalemate trick with incredible precision, because there's cases where the queen is a very important piece when it comes to doing the stalemate. And so by the queen taking your piece that's doing check, taking the rook, you're actually gaining some more moves for your king. So you have to calculate all of these very precisely. And, similarly, if we go back to the first position, some of you might be thinking, hey, why can't we just play queen g3 with the same idea? But again, precision is incredibly important here. And now the black king, whenever it wants, can simply take your rook, or the queen can take once it steps onto d7, because white has an extra move on f4. So importantly, the black pawn moved to f4 in that other line, which stopped this pawn on f3 from progressing. Before we move on to a final example that is also quite beautiful, I want to give some context to this position, because this was actually a game between two computer engines, and white actually, on the move before this position, sacrificed their bishop, because here white realized it's a drawn position, and what more beautiful way can you guarantee the draw than by sacrificing your bishop, and then sacrificing your queen, and then sacrificing your rook. Some incredible calculation from the engine. And of course, if queen takes, it should be noted that this does not save the position in any way, because rook to e8, followed by rook to c8, and white has enough material because this king is so unsafe. White will indeed be able to hold the draw in this position. So some beautiful ideas to convert this into a draw. And now moving on to a final position, it's actually in this position, after black takes the queen on f2, what would you play here as white? It seems obvious to, recapture the queen, right? But actually here, black ends up winning. These pawns with the aid of the bishop are simply unstoppable. b4 followed by a3, b3, the bishop again will come to aid these pawns, and the rook is outmatched here. And so instead you had to think outside the box here, and notice that this queen is very conveniently giving stalemate to the king. Notice the pawns also can't move, and so you can use this suicidal rook idea with rook to h8, and after king takes rook, it is stalemate, and the king actually has to take the rook here. And in case you're interested, actually, to give some more context, white was actually playing a game here rated 300 rating points less than their opponent, and so it's just a really beautiful way to guarantee a draw against someone rated much higher than you in this fashion here. So obviously a really impressive result playing against someone 300 rating points above you. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. It truly is one of the nicest and most beautiful techniques in endgames, and it's much more practical than one might think because you often reach positions where you don't have that many moves and these ideas become possible. So thank you for watching. Subscribe if you're new around here. Press the like button as well if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.